Hi everyone. So Grainne and I have got together today to talk about something pretty big that's just happened to her. If you don't know already, she's just had her fourth baby 6 weeks ago or 7 weeks ago, Grainne?
It'll be 8 weeks on Friday.
8 weeks on 8 weeks ago, pretty much.
Mhm.
We wanted to use this opportunity, seeing that Grainne wrote the Return to Running guidelines, has had her fourth baby, also loves running and wants to get back to running. We wanted to take this opportunity to see and record her postnatal journey, but also see how the running guidelines contribute to that journey. So, Grainne is currently feeding baby Ada at the moment, multitasking at its best. And so, first of all, congratulations. And
Thank you.
tell us, I guess, first, how was your pregnancy with Ada? How active were you, and did you have any issues at all throughout the pregnancy?
So pregnancy was really straightforward for the majority of it. Yeah, this actually, I was quite surprised because I've obviously three young kids. I've a 5-year-old and now just turned 4-year-old, and I've an almost 2-year-old. And I was a bit worried about how it would be because life's going to be crazy, let's face it. But sickness wasn't too bad, and I was really active, and I had still the same energy levels right the whole way through it, probably until the mid 30 weeks. I tend to get obstetric cholestasis. So for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's just when my liver functions go off, and it's a pregnancy-related condition. And because that can pose some, I suppose, implications for my bodily functions, and then it can impact on potentially the baby, they tend to treat it as a very medicalized pregnancy once you enter cholestasis. So basically, to talk back a wee bit about my pregnancy journeys and experiences, my first delivery, I wasn't diagnosed with obstetric cholestasis, but potentially might have had it. But I was treated as a normal pregnancy, and I got to labour and splash about in the birthing pool, and I delivered in gas and air, and it was just, I didn't realise it at the time, but it was an amazing experience. And then the next two deliveries, I was diagnosed with cholestasis, so I was very much medicalised and induced at 37 weeks, which again, I had textbook deliveries if you were to read my notes, but I felt very medicalised. I felt it was a tougher labour, and yeah, I just don't like that idea of nearly being pinned to the bed, and because every time I got up they wanted me back down for readings of the baby because it was continuous monitoring. So this time around I was using all my positive energy to, I suppose, to try and not let myself get obstetric cholestasis. I don't think that's possible, but I was, I was having positive mental attitude, and I was really hoping that I could maybe just have a normal, non-medicalised labour again. And I had a great medical team behind me who agreed to try and get me into labour before my bloods went off. So I was given sweeps from 37 weeks, and I did go into labour, thankfully. And I was treated as a normal delivery, and I got to birth in the pool again. I got out to deliver, but I got everything I wanted basically. But that was really important to me, and the reason being, I was quite anxious about this delivery because of the fact that I knew that I may have an impending induction, and already psychologically I was telling myself that that's going to be tougher. And I also was a wee bit anxious being a pelvic health physiotherapist, knowing what we treat, knowing risk factors. I was starting to think, right, if I end up having fourth vaginal delivery here, my risk factors are stacking against me. I've recovered really well from all my other pregnancies. This time everything's going to hit the floor. So even though, that if we're treating people, we educate them, we empower them, it's very hard to not be the patient when you're the patient yourself. So anyway, I went into that a wee bit more anxious, but I had an excellent team, and that made all the difference because feeling listened to and me feeling like I had some control over my labour journey really, really, I suppose, impacted and benefited my recovery.
Yeah, brilliant. And tell me, during the pregnancy, did you run at all? Well, any four of your pregnancies, did you keep high impact as part of your regime?
In the last two, not this pregnancy, but in the last two, I would have been playing netball at the very beginning, which would be considered impact, and then I would have probably I would have stopped playing it before I was 20 weeks, just more out of safety, just because I just was afraid of falling and things. But I wasn't actually running, and it's not for not wanting to run. It was more that life was a bit dull, and having so many young kids, it's harder to get out. But generally exercising, yes, I was. But I was really keen. My whole objective this time was that I really want to ensure I'm recovering well, because I want to get back into running this time, and I want to do things like I want to do the couch 5Ks, I want to do marathons. Me and you've already signed up with Sophie for an ultra marathon, and we're sticking to it. So I have all that there in mind, and that was the goal that I was, I suppose, placing before I even had the baby.
Great. And I presume throughout and in between pregnancies, no pelvic floor dysfunction, or am I wrong?
No, like I suppose immediately after maybe the second and third delivery, I might have had some mild stress urinary incontinence, and I'm talking about like in the first 2 weeks or so after delivery, but recovered well and managed to get back to high impact exercise with relative ease. Obviously, as a pelvic health physiotherapist, I would have been doing my pelvic floor rehab, but again, the risk factors were against me. I was kind of living in hope, thinking, will it be the same this time? Will I be able to do my pelvic floor exercises, get my continence mechanisms back? How will it go? Will I have a bad tear? All these, I suppose variables and all these unknown questions that I had as I was coming towards the delivery.
Yeah. And so in our guidelines, we recommend obviously using outcome measures, one of which is the Australian Pelvic Floor Questionnaire. And I know that you have diligently carried out at least 2 of those. So tell us when you carried them out and what your scores were.
So initially I carried it out about 3 days postnatal, and I scored 29 out of 117, was it, that we were talking about? And the areas that flagged up with it were, like initially after delivery, I would have had some stress urinary incontinence. So just cough, sneeze, like that. There wasn't really any urgency or anything. It was more just, I suppose it was more just a shock to the pelvic floor area, and it not really acting. But I thankfully diligently worked at all the things pelvic health physiotherapists concentrate on. So doing my pelvic floor rehab, bladder hygiene, bowel hygiene, getting everything regulated. And I was glad to say that at 6 weeks postnatal, I scored. Did you take it down? No.
Yes, you scored 4 out of 170.
4. Yeah,
so
and the only thing, massive improvement, and the only things that I was flagging up on then were, I'm just going to tell you. When I did it about 6 weeks postnatal, I was still having a little bit of constipation, which I'm not having now. So I've actually forgot about that in the last 2 weeks. But yes, when I filled that in, I was having. So that was what I was flagging up for. It was more just that idea of, it was just regulating the stools basically that I needed to work on.
Amazing. So obviously you're going to keep carrying on that record throughout the certain key points where we'll meet up again. But hopefully soon it'll be 0. But it pretty much sounds like it is 0 now, actually. It's
getting there. Yeah. So yeah, I've already got rid of those bowel issues, so that's fab. Yeah. And I think some of them, because I haven't returned to high impact exercise, it'll be telling to repeat it when I'm doing a more high impact stuff.
Exactly. So let's talk about your journey from 0 to 6 weeks, or from 0 to your 6-week GP check. What, from an exercise point of view, have you managed to do other than pelvic floor rehab? What other things have you managed to squeeze in?
Walking, so out walking with the baby, either with the pram or more recently, I suppose, putting her in the sling. I've been doing that, but I've also, when I've got a window of opportunity, I've been down in our clinic gym on the treadmill, walking, but at an incline, just because again that offloads the pelvic floor somewhat, and you can still do it. That incline gives you a good workout with the quads and hams and calves, and you can still feel like you're working all the other muscle groups while you're not strenuously putting any pressure through the pelvic area. I've also been doing squats and lunges as we've progressed, and just I'm trying to think, and just general core rehab. Funny, this morning I was telling you I did a session on the reformer,
Yeah.
And now that I'm hitting the 8 week spot, with the goal in mind of maybe, I suppose, aiming to think about return to run the 12 weeks,
Yeah.
it's time to start thinking about slightly increasing the intensity that does go through the pelvic floor area. And I'm lucky enough to have access to a reformer. And the bounce board is actually ideal because we can actually put up a video of that afterwards. We can put it on our pages. But I was able to do it, and you can, again, if you think about it in terms of running, you can really train for running technique and things because you can do single leg bounces, you can do alternate leg bounces. So it was really, really very fitting for what my goal is, although I felt safeguarded with the fact I'm putting some impact through and starting to hopefully trigger those natural responses of pelvic floor activity, but I'm not overloading.
Yeah, brilliant. Have you added in any weights into your strength training yet?
I have actually. I've done really light kettlebells. I have a 4 kilogram kettlebell weights, and I've been doing a bit of upper limb work. And I'm a huge fan of deadlifts and things. And again, if we think of what we're doing as mummies, I'm deadlifting throughout the day, whether it's laundry baskets or whether it's kids off the floor. And so it's training, I suppose, function specific training or like task specific training that I'm trying to strengthen up for. So I've been doing those just because it makes me feel good. And again, it's that idea of while I'm not out running the roads yet, feeling like I'm getting a good workout. And there's so many things that can be done. Last week, was it last week or was it longer than that? I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but we've like a huge nature area. It's called the Culkey Boardwalk.
Yeah,
and like
your pictures.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
so we did it, and again, it was a walk or a hike, and there was lots of steps and a really, really good cardiovascular and strength workout, but yet low impact. So I really, really enjoyed that. And it's that kind of sort of like getting out and about, getting outside, getting the outdoors, getting the benefits, still exercising, but in an interesting way. So you just don't feel like, oh, I'm just going for the usual walk that I do. You know, it's trying to keep it exciting and different and interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So you had your 6 week GP check about a week and a half ago now, wasn't it? Or just around about that. How did it go?
Well, I got the all clear. But what I would say about as you and I know, Emma, and that was one of the catalysts for, I suppose, coming together and creating guidelines for return to exercise, because we in our clinical role knew that, I suppose, the return to impact exercise in our experience with any of our patients isn't really given much consideration. And I was quite interested to see what would happen at my 6 week check this time. And I had a lovely lady doctor, and she's fabulous. Although it covered the usual things that we know a 6 week check covers. So mental health, contraception, and just overall, are you feeling okay? And I was, and I suppose I'm informed and I know what I'm, I suppose, working on in terms of my rehab. I've already progressed and sorted out any of the pelvic health issues that were flagging. I'm not concerned about any of my areas of healing. Although if I was, and say I was someone coming in and I wasn't from the background I was at, and I was having leaking from the bladder still or pressure down below, if someone just asked me a generically open question of, is everything going okay? I probably would say, yeah. I need someone to probe me and go like, and are you sure? Or specifically, like, what about pelvic floor? Or like to go through and prompt some of the symptoms so that you go, oh gosh, is this something people complain of? Because a lot of women don't know that these are issues that can be complained about, and that it's while it's common, that it's not normal. So in one element, I was disappointed that way, and there was no talk about exercise at all. There was no mention of pelvic floor exercises. But again, I have to recognise that GPs, particularly where I am in our rural manner, we've had multiple GP practices close, and I know the GPs are under immense pressure.
Yeah.
I also, I suppose, can't rule out the idea that they may know my background, so they may presume that I'm ticking the box with a lot of those things and not have to go through them. So I can't make this generic and say that that's all that happens at the 6 week check here, but that was my experience of it. And that's why I think our guidelines are so needed. One, to get the discussion open, and two, to give people, like, I suppose, steps to work through to know when they're ready to get back. Because we know the 6 week check is a tick box for a lot of like boot camps and exercise classes. So I could sign up for any of them now because I've had my 6 week check.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one thing that I've found in my local area that it's not because GPs aren't interested, it's often because they haven't had that education around postnatal rehab. What I found to be really effective is I've created a little tick box where I've encouraged the GPs just to hand, or the receptionists to hand patients their tick box before they go in for their 6-week check. And actually in my area, we've managed to start getting it into the health visitors book, the red book.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And so ladies are taking that checklist, because some people don't want to openly say that they're leaking urine, not because they should feel embarrassed, but they do feel embarrassed, particularly if it's a male GP. So they're handing them that slip, and then from that, the GP's opening up conversation and then signposting to women's health physio, because they don't have the time to upskill. They don't need to upskill because they have pelvic health physios. And that's working really well in my area for the GPs that are aware of it. And they've also I've given them a big bundle of the infographics that we had designed for return to running guidelines. And I hope, I haven't been to the GP clinic recently, but I hope they're just sat on the reception area where women can just have a look at them and get an idea of themselves as to what they perhaps should and shouldn't be doing when they've just had a baby. So sometimes we have a role to play at perhaps, promoting what we do and getting to the GPs. And I do think there's a lot to be said for, getting into your GP clinics and getting to know your GPs and telling them what you do and taking that load from them, because they don't have much time, as you say. But yeah, so that's working well in my area, that's for sure. And I guess you have the knowledge and the know to go and see a pelvic health physiotherapist for your GP, for your 6, if you like, at 6 weeks for your pelvic health check. And you have Laura Forker. I'll get that right. And she assessed you last week, I think I'm right in saying, for your pelvic health assessment. How did it go?
Yeah, again, another thing that potentially, not that I was anxious about, I knew that my pelvic floor was functioning well, but again, what I'm expecting, anyone who's had babies is going to have some degree of normal descent of the pelvic organs, which we know, and it's fine. But sometimes being told that can be, psychologically, that can be something that we don't want to hear, even though we might know it's normal. So I was just afraid of getting assessed, and I'm not good at being the patient. I'm full disclosure here, I'm not good at being the patient, and I was just like, oh my goodness, if she tells me prolapse, is gonna be mad. But it went okay, and again, I would say, so if we go through the evaluation, all was healed well. I have probably grade 1 descent of probably the anterior and posterior wall of the vagina. Not even with Valsalva, it's not coming down to the entrance, so it's only just my grade 1, which is normal, okay? I have, but again, it's an indication for me to be mindful of why we're doing the rehab we're doing and the progression we're doing, so that I don't overload that area, because I don't want that to progress. And I am asymptomatic with that, which is brilliant, because I have no awareness of any heavy Mr. Dragon down below. Pelvic floor strength, I was delighted. My pelvic floor strength's really good. I would say it's a good 4. She actually said, she was like, jeepers, I wasn't expecting that oomph. She was like, I haven't felt a pelvic floor like that in a while, because usually we're treating weak pelvic floor. So I'll take my wins when I get them. I might have a bit of descent, but I have a hugely strong pelvic floor. So I'm delighted at that. And again, all that's from doing the rehab. And what I want to highlight to anyone listening is that one of the things I notice with women after they have a baby and maybe they're doing the pelvic floor exercises, they just do a few they've been told by the midwife, a few wee squeezes. Like they're doing them. I did them while they're sleeping the baby, but we know the principles of strengthening, and we have to overload the muscles. So it has to be drawn in to max voluntary capacity. You need to be doing your slow twitch and fast twitch ones, and they shouldn't be just really, really easy to do. You should be glad to be getting a rest, basically, after doing your reps. So I worked diligently at that, and it paid off. So
well done. On the back there. And how about your tummy? How's that doing?
Tummy was good, really good tension. There's probably a 2 finger width gap at the umbilicus, but there's no depth to it at all. I'm not doming at all. I'm recruiting really well, and so I'm hoping that as I continue and build up exercise, that well, that's a normal degree of separation anyway. If it's not causing me any issue, but I'll review that in a couple of weeks and see has it changed any. But lower assessment pelvic floor and standing too. So we did a few squats and things, just to make it functional. And again, there was no descent or no further descent of the anterior or posterior walls with squatting. So that's reassuring for me.
Brilliant. But you, especially having had 4 children, I would say that you're probably not the norm in, you know, not to worry anyone, but that's incredible how well you've done there. Especially it would have been 7 weeks, wouldn't it, or just under that? So you are wow, you're a great case study to see how well things will improve. But at the same time, I would say the majority of women I see don't tend to present as well.
Yes, and to be honest, I'm surprised I don't have more descent.
Yeah, I am.
Because again, that's quite like we know that the risk factors for pelvic organ descent are vaginal deliveries, and we know that descent in the Paris population is pretty normal, and we want to minimise that as much as possible. But with each vaginal delivery and with everything we do afterwards, but I'll be interested to track that as I go back to impact exercise, so that you know at the minute I'm doing low impact stuff, and it's not causing me any bother. But
it's great news. Did Laura carry out any load impact tests on you, or did you decide at 6 weeks not worthwhile doing at the moment?
We decided not to do it yet because I wasn't planning to get back to anything that immediately, but over the next few weeks, that's what I intend to run through a couple of them to see, maybe even at the 10-week mark to see how I run through the ones listed in the guidelines. But what I wanted to highlight when I'm on it was like exercising's tough, and getting the time to exercise is tough with anyone with a new baby and with other kids. So I empathise with everyone out there. And one of the things I particularly realised was, in order to consider all the other things that we highlight in the guidelines, like breastfeeding and sleep and the risks for REDS, it's tough to keep on top of all that, because an example I'll give is the day that we decided to walk the Culkey Boardwalk. So it takes hours to do. So we had, I was taking Ada, my youngest, with me, but obviously we weren't taking the other 3. So I had childcare arranged, so my mum was happily taking the kids. But we had a really poor night's sleep the night before with Ada. She was up a lot of the night, so there was sleep ticked off the butts. I think that morning, because we were trying to get out in a rush and get the kids ready because we were heading off, we were just eating on the go. You know, so if I think of my, you know, different risk factors, and I'm breastfeeding, so that's another thing to throw in the mix. Possibly I should have been evaluating, thinking, is this the best day to do the boardwalk? Now, it worked out fine. But what I would say is, with the offer, when you've 3+ kids and someone's offering for childcare, you don't pass up on that. You take that opportunity. So I was going and doing that boardwalk no matter what. And it worked out grand, and I felt good for getting out there. But it's just, if I had other factors going on, or I was in an energy deficit, or I had other medical things going on, that may have not been the best day for me to do it. And it just highlights how, I suppose, how many things you have to consider in the postpartum period.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not as simple as having a strong pelvic floor and not having any symptoms. There's so many other factors, aren't there? And certainly as a woman, having had the baby, you need to listen to your body. And as a healthcare professional, you have to respect the fact that you are going to see patients some weeks where they haven't done their exercises, or haven't been able to hit the goals that you set. And that's just life of having children, isn't it? You kind of come low down on your list of priorities when it comes to and it's just having that respect as a clinician, but that respect as a woman with your own body as well, isn't it? But you sound like you're doing incredibly well. So what's the plan for the next couple of weeks?
So
When are you next seeing Laura?
I probably maybe around the 10 or 11 week to do some of the load impact tests and see if anything's flagging up, maybe to get evaluated again to see how things are going. I'm going to continue to introduce impact, so with the reformer and the bounce board, but
Yeah.
also then getting land impact. So I have actually, where I plan to do it first is either out in the grass area, or we have like a play area for the kids that has bark on it, so it's nice and soft and
Yeah.
less impacted. So I might do a bit of like load and impact testing on that, or use those tests as drills nearly for myself. I'm obviously, when I'm entering that stage, I'm going to get on the support wear and wear my EVBs that I have. So I've been just wearing leggings and comfy clothes around the house. And so that's what I've been exercising in, but I'm going to make sure that I'm safeguarding with the EVBs.
Yeah.
And is there anything else I'm planning to do in the next few weeks? No, and then I'll probably try a return to run, and I'll fill out the Australian questionnaire after that again, just to see if anything changes.
Brilliant.
What I want to say was, in terms of the GP appointment too, this is typical of mom life, and we always put ourselves at the end of the list, because that was my appointment and I was in and I was intrigued to see how it would go. And then when I realised kind of the 3 main topics that were being covered, and then I was like, actually, could you look at the baby's wee umbilical area? Just wanted to check that's okay. So then we turned it into nearly the baby's appointment, because I wanted to check something out. And the GP was great and she was lovely and she sorted out an issue for me there. But that was an appointment for me that I then made about my child. Do you know what I mean? So as women, I think we're just awful at looking after ourselves.
Terrible, but I think as well in some areas, certainly in my area, that's a good point, that they do a combined baby mother check. And I remember mine, it was 10 minutes for baby, 10 minutes for me. And it ended up being approximately 12 minutes for baby and about 6 minutes for me, and then some tapping around at the end. And actually, I had a similar experience to the one that you had. And the combination of both, it's very easy for you to get forgotten in that. And I know that's becoming more popular in London, so it's really important that you are making sure that you are asking all the questions. Go in with a list of questions if you have any, and as I said earlier, if you don't want to ask, just give the paper over, but have a think before you go into your 6-week check if you have any concerns, and don't be worried or anxious to mention any physical concerns you have, because we certainly see them all day, every day, and it's important that they're addressed and not ignored, because the majority of these conditions, like leaking urine and fecal incontinence and dyspareunia, which is painful sex after having baby, in particular, they are very treatable, particularly with pelvic health physio. So if the GP isn't sure how to manage them, then ask them to signpost you to your physio, be it on the NHS or private physio if you can afford to self-fund, or you can, of course, use your medical insurance as well in most of these cases. So yes, you have to have a voice with this stuff, because otherwise it gets slightly swept under the carpet, doesn't it?
Totally.
Fortunately, at the moment. Awesome. Well, I think that's probably a good time for us to draw this to a close. But just to say that we are going to hopefully catch up in when you're around about 12 weeks, and see what journey your postnatal recovery has taken, and see whether or not you're introducing a bit of impact as well. Is there anything else you want to mention that we maybe haven't covered?
No, I think we went through the checks that we got and what exercise I'm doing, and and it's funny because at this stage, like at 8 weeks, you do feel, well, if you've had a straightforward enough journey, you do feel good at this point. I can see how people, like, well before this, hit the roads and get out. And that's where the pelvic health check, it was, yes, I was happy with how my physiotherapy check went, but finding out that, yes, I am not immune, I am not superhuman and immune to any descent of pelvic organ, is good for me to hear, so that it kind of, I suppose, highlights to me the importance of doing the rehab and playing the long game. So that's what I'm hoping to do. Let's see if that safeguards me along the future, or if it doesn't. And so it'll be interesting to see. So let's monitor it.
Yeah, awesome. All right, thanks so much. I'll speak to you later. All right, thanks, Grainne. Bye.